In today's session, we shall get familiar with various intermediaries that operate in the capital market. Besides knowing various market intermediaries, we shall also examine what role each of these plays in the capital market. As we begin, you may be curious to know about what an intermediary is, right? Don't worry, I am going to overcome your curiosity by making you understand the literal meaning of this word. Now, when we look at the dictionary meaning of this word, we find that intermediary is a person or an organization that helps two people or groups to reach an agreement by being a means of communication between them. Now, I'm sure that your minds would have begun to generate ideas about whom this reference is being made to. Now I ask you a question. Have you ever seen people that want to buy or sell a piece of land or real estate looking for a broker so that it could arrange that land or real estate for them? Okay, let's wait for the answer. Another question which I pose to you is that when you go to a shop to buy something, do you ever imagine that you deal with an intermediary there? Probably you never realize this fact. Today I will tell you that every shopkeeper or a merchant from whom we buy various things is basically an intermediary between us and the manufacturer of what we buy from there, right? Same is the role of the individual or organization that arranges for us a deal of buying or selling piece of real estate. So that's what an intermediary is then, right? But we need to know about a financial intermediary, right? Let's see then who is a financial intermediary. But a financial intermediary is a bit different from other intermediaries when we look at what he does in the market. In financial markets, intermediaries not just help two parties to work out a deal, but they basically help them in shifting of their risks. So, in simple financial intermediaries arrange financial contracts involving risk return consequences for the parties that are interested in entering into such contracts. Now, think of a stockbroker as a financial intermediary in the market. How does it intermediate? It intermediates by arranging a sale purchase deal between the two parties. When we buy or sell stock through a broker, the broker not only facilitates transfer of ownership in stocks but between two parties, but such deal also leads to shifting of risks involved in stocks from its seller to the buyer. In the process of this intermediation, for some time, the broker also becomes a party to these risks. That's the risks are borne by him as well till the process of settlement is completed. The principal question that might strike our minds before we start any discussion on the topic of role of financial intermediaries in the capital market may be why can't parties do business in the capital market over the counter or bilaterally, right? Why do they need a third party intermediary to help them strike a deal? Now let's find out the answer. Anyone interested in capital market can't trade on his own or without an agent or an intermediary because when people try to do so, soon they realize they face a serious problem in the market. And what's that problem? That problem is known as asymmetric information. And what's asymmetric information? Asymmetric information occurs when one party to an economic transaction possesses greater material knowledge than the other party. In a simple sense, asymmetric information suggests that sellers may possess more information than buyers, skewing the price of goods sold. Due to this, low quality and high quality products can command the same price, given a lack of information on the buyer's side. To understand asymmetric information, just think of buying a used car or a laptop from the gray market. In this case, the owner is likely to have full knowledge about the service history and likelihood of breakdown of the given items that the buyer would have, right? Let's suppose that you buy a phone from somebody that has been used for a year. That somebody may simply be a seller of used phones in the market. Even if you use the phone to check out its quality, you may still lack to have full information. Let's say you check the phone and buy it. A few days later, you realize that the phone had some problems, such as shutting itself down unexpectedly, approximately every day. That was the thing the seller did not have any moral or decency to mention to you when you brought this phone, right? So that's the reason why used phones, laptops, or cars and other products lose their prices after a certain amount of time, even if it has no problem as the new ones. Okay, we confront asymmetric information almost in all instances when we want to buy something. A financial institution faces asymmetric information when it has to extend a loan to a borrower. Similarly, insurance companies face this problem while writing insurance contracts with their clients. The market is literally full of instances that pose information asymmetry to the people intending to make purchases. Asymmetric information creates a situation where we do not feel comfortable anymore to trust each other. In financial markets, people face asymmetric problem in two forms. That's moral hazard and adverse selection. Soon we will come to know what these problems are and how they arise. The economic theory of asymmetric information was developed in the 1970s and 1980s as a plausible explanation for market failures. Right? This theory proposes that an imbalance of information between buyers and sellers can lead to market failures. Now, who told us about this great idea of asymmetric information? On your screen, can you see some images? Who are these people? You might not be knowing them. Well, let me tell you, they are known as George Akerlof, Michael Spence, and Joseph Stiglitz. These are those three great wise men that introduced financial markets, or more appropriately, the whole world, with the theory of asymmetric information. They were conferred with Nobel Prize in Economics in year 2001 for their work on analysis of markets with asymmetric information. We also need to honor them for their work. So let us spend a few minutes to understand this amazing idea of asymmetric information with the help of some examples, right? Now we take the problem of moral hazard and adverse selection for discussion. These are the two main problems that can happen in the financial markets given the condition of asymmetric information between the parties, right? These problems basically arise given the condition of asymmetric information. Moral hazard occurs when the information asymmetry moral hazard occurs under the information asymmetry where the risk-taking party knows more about his or her intentions than the other party. In a more serious, moral hazard problem, one party provides misleading information about something and enters to a transaction to earn benefits using deceptive ways, right? Such instances are more prevalent in insurance business. Given this type of moral hazard problem, insurance companies are unable to differentiate the risks of their clients to whom they are going to sell insurance contracts. Although they try to differentiate as much as they can, but that is just never enough, right? So they will always be in lack of information compared to their clients. Hence, the company mostly determines the same prices for all their clients, despite the fact that some of them bear extremely high risk of having problems than the others. Let's go through an example, okay, to understand all this. Now, imagine two individuals, one of which has 2000 rupees worth of risk and the other has 8000 rupees of 8000 rupees of risk involved, right? But as we mentioned before, that insurance companies are never quite sure about what the price should be. They put the average one, right? In this case, it will be 2000 plus 8000 divided by 2, which brings us to 5000 rupees, right? But what happens when the person with lower risk realizes that he pays more than what he has to, so he quits the market, okay? This is the place where the real problem occurs because the overall price becomes 8000 rupees, which is also the average price now, right? Now let's continue the example with Lehman theory. Okay, now what's this Lehman theory? So what's this Lehman theory in the first place? In American slang, a lemon is a car that's found to be defective only after it's been brought, right? The cherries, however, is considered to be the good one according to this theory. Cherries are also called peaches or plums, right? So the concept that there are lots of used car sellers, and some of the cars are lemons, which means they are defective, and the others are cherries without any problem. But as all the sellers deny their products to be lemons, the overall buyers have no idea which one is lemon and which one is cherry, right? To understand this, let us see another example. Now imagine that there are 50 lemons with the real price of 10,000 rupees and 50 cherries with the real price of 30,000 rupees each, right? So as you may have already guessed, the average price is 20,000 rupees. But what happens next? Well, you remember the individual who stopped his insurance in the previous example, right? That's what's going to happen here as well. Seeing the opportunity, 20 lemon sellers enter the market because due to not knowing the difference between lemons and cherries, the buyers can only formulate average price for all of them. But now as additional 20 lemon sellers enter the market, the total average price falls down to 18,000, about 18,000 rupees, right? The adverse selection moves on because some of the cherry sellers just realized that the cost of their cars was 19,000 rupees itself, let alone 18,000 rupees. Therefore, 20 of the cherry sellers, unsatisfied with the price, stopped selling cars and move out of the market, which makes the average price to fall down further to rupees 16,000. Okay, and also which makes the process to continue until there are no cherries left in the market. So that's as a whole the idea of the problem of information asymmetry and how it arises in the financial markets, right? So essentially, people are not able to make difference between the bad things and the bad quality things and the good quality things. They ultimately end up paying the same price for a bad quality thing, which otherwise they had to pay for a good quality thing, right? So we arrive at the moral of the story, and that's we go to the market to buy plums, but instead end up carrying home lemons in our cart, right? Now, after going through all this, discussion, we must have now understood why intermediaries are needed in the in why why intermediaries are needed to be there in the markets, and what do they do there, right? Essentially, they try to bring down the problem of information asymmetry between the two contracting parties. Now let's examine who are the various financial, after doing with the problem of information asymmetry and the scope of financial intermediaries in the market. Now let's examine who are the various financial intermediaries in the capital market and also understand what the role of each of them is, right? For this purpose, we will dissect the capital market into two basic parts. That is the primary market, which is also called the new offer market, and the secondary market, which is also known as the market for trade, right? The conscious separation of capital markets into two segments will help us. This conscious separation of capital market into two segments will help us to understand role of various financial intermediaries much better, particularly in a situation when their operations overlap these two parts of the capital market, right? However, it must be remembered that by and large intermediaries are similar across both of these market segments. This is the set of intermediaries that are involved in the new offer market. In this market, few of these intermediaries have a unique role. That's they operate only in the new offer market because the kind of services they offer there are relevant in case of new issues only. These intermediaries, for instance, include investment bankers, syndicate members, underwriters, rating agencies, legal counsel, and auditors. The rest of the intermediaries mentioned here will also be existent in the market for trade as well, right? Now, these are the intermediaries that make up the market for trade. Let's read them out. They include stock exchanges, stock brokers and sub-brokers, registrars to an issue, share transfer agents, depositories and depository participants, banks and clearing houses. In this market, intermediaries are unique, keeping in view the fact that transactions happen here investor to investor only, right? After going through the group of intermediaries in the two different segments of the capital market, here is the summary of intermediaries that either have a role in one of these markets or in both of them. In the following slides, we will discuss their role one by one. Now, first of all, we look at the role of the lead manager. Okay, who is a lead manager? He is the one among the group of investment bankers that a capital offering company might have hired for managing its public offer. In a public offer which is to be made through book building process, he is called BRLM or book running lead manager. He is called so because he is responsible for running or maintaining the book of bids during the time when a public offer is open under auction. On your screen, you can notice names of some of the prominent firms in India that offer investment banking services in the capital market. Now let's see what a lead manager does, right? His role is only in case of public offerings. His role is very crucial during a public offer. He works right from preparing and finalizing a prospect till the end of the offer. He ensures that securities are allotted to the eligible applicant investors, and consideration received from them is handed over to the company issuing to the capital issuing company after deducting charges incurred on the offer, right? Let's list out the role of the lead manager. First of all, the lead manager is responsible for conducting due diligence of all the documents involved in a public offer. Second, it prepares the prospectus and gets it approved from various agencies or regulators. Third, it helps issuing company in appointing or entering into contracts with the other necessary intermediaries. And finally, it helps the issuing company in pricing of the public offer, its sale, and also listing on a recognized stock exchange. So that was about the lead manager and his role in the capital market. Now, these are some of the banks that offer investment banking services to the issuing companies in India, right? So, in our list of intermediaries that we have taken up for understanding, investment banker figures at number two, right? Here you can note that functions of the investment banker. Now, when we try to understand what functions does investment banker perform, we note that functions of investment banker are almost identical to what a lead manager does, right? This is because in a public offer, it is actually a group of investment bankers that is needed to carry out the process of offer smoothly, and from among those, one of the investment bankers acts as a lead manager, right? Hence, lead manager along with its team, which is a group of investment banks, perform concurrently various functions that were listed out previously in case of the lead manager, right? Therefore, in case of investment bankers, the functions are just the repetition of what we discussed already under the functions of the lead manager. Moving on. Now, on your screen, you can see some of the well-known firms that act as syndicate members in case of public offers in the capital market. These include some of the very well-known brokerage firms like Unicorn, Carvey, and Religare. Okay. Now, what is the place of syndicate member in the entire party of the public offer? Their role is very simple. They obtain bids from institutional and retail investors when a public offer is open for bidding under the auction, right? In other words, they act as nodes where prospective investors can submit their bids to an offer. Further, they also provide underwriting services to the issuing companies during a public offer. Under underwriting arrangement, they provide issuing companies a pledge to buy all the unsold shares when a public offer does not get a good response from the market. We already understood that syndicate members provide underwriting services to the issuing company, under which they undertake to subscribe the portion of securities that are not subscribed during the offer. So that's what an underwriter does in the offer. Now come to the registrar to an issue. Your screen shows you a few of the companies that act as registrar to the public offers. Okay. Registrar to an issue handles the crucial operational part of any public offer, right? So let's try to understand his role. The registrar to an issue, along with the issuing company and other intermediaries, called share transfer agent, enters into agreement with depositories, enabling to have shares issued in the demat or surplus form for the investors in a public offer, right? Thereafter, functions of the registrar include processing of application forms to a public offer, coordinating with the bankers to the issue, and investment bankers for completion of reconciliation of application and post-issue work, right? Then it prepares documents for allotment of shares and securing of approval for listing. Finally, it performs processing of data for refund and for transfer of securities in the demat form in favor of the eligible allottees, right? Then you can see some of the companies that offer share transfer agent services in Indian market. Now, who is a share transfer agent and what is his role? Let's try to grasp that. The role of the share transfer agent is following a public offer. He is responsible for regularly updating of he does his role after a public offer is complete, right? Post public offer. He is responsible for regularly updating of register of shareholder on behalf of the issuing company. He also facilitates transfer of securities between investors that trade in the secondary market following closure of public offer and its listing on the exchange, right? Then we have bankers to an issue. This is the list of some of the excuse me. This is the list of some of the banks in India that act as bankers to public offers. They are called bankers to the issue. Now let's examine their role in the capital market. Excuse me. This is the role performed by a banker during a public offer, right? The banker to the issue is mainly responsible for collecting money on account of bid applications towards a public offer, right? It also takes care of ASBA instructions during a public offer. Now, what's ASBA, right? ASBA stands for application supported by blocked amount. In ASBA, an investor investor applicant's bank account doesn't get debited until shares are allotted to them, right? This means that no advance payment is to be made by the applicant investor unless shares are allotted by the issuing company. But of course, his bank account will be blocked to the extent of amount of the bid made when an investor submits application in a public offer, right? The banker to the issue is also responsible for making of refund of money in case of partly or rejected applications or execution of ASBA cancellations, right? That happens at the end after the closure of the public offer, right? Finally, the banker to an issue is to conduct the post-issue reconciliation in case of various account related to the public offer. Then we have credit rating agency. Okay, these are the SEBI authorized credit rating agencies. They are just three of them. That's you can find on your screen: CRISIL, CREAR, and ICRA. The mandate of approved rating agencies is just to grade a public offer, right? Give a rating to any public offer which is going to be made by the companies in the capital market. Excuse me. This is done. The public offer is rated. The rating of a public offer is done to provide prospective investors in general with an independent opinion about the quality of a certain offer that may be on the offer by a company in the capital market. Okay, so this rating agencies have a role in the capital market. They rate all potential public offers are mandatory to be rated by the rating agencies. Okay, SEBI authorized rating agencies. This is done to provide prospective investors in general with a independent opinion about the quality of a certain issue that may be on the offer by a company in the capital market. Okay, so that prospective investors are well informed about any public offer which is made in the market, so that they don't face any difficulty in deciding whether to take that public offer or just to ignore it, right? These are the two depositories that operate in India, right? Now we take the role of depositories. These are the two depositories that operate in India. Depositories may be those institutions that hold securities and assist in the trading of securities in the market, right? These organizations operate through their agents known as depository participants or DPs. Okay, so there are two main depositories that exist in India, but depositories directly don't offer services to the parties or the people in the market. They have appointed their agents, which are known as depository participants. So generally, financial institutions, brokerage houses, they apply for agency for membership in depositories, and then they get that membership, and they finally then act as depository participants, or in other words, we can say they offer services of a depository on behalf of depository to the people in the markets, right? Now, what's the role of depository in the entire activities that happen in the capital market, right? Now, they perform two important roles. One is dematerialization, and another is custodian of securities. They act as custodian of securities in the market, right? Now we will take up both of them for understanding. Now, first of all, dematerialization. Dematerialization, or DMAT, in short, is the process through which an investor's physical share certificate gets converted into electronic format, right? Under this arrangement, a security or a share is then maintained with the depository merely in the form of an electronic record. Okay, hence under these conditions, the depository acts as a custodian of securities, so it offers fiduciary services, right? Trust services. Okay, so it acts as a custodian of the securities, or in other words, it just offers a fiduciary facility or service to the investors that hold securities in electronic form with the depository. Okay, you must take into cognizance at this point of time that if it's a security in physical form, that can be held by an investor in his possession, right? But once the security is moved into an electronic form, it is changed into an electronic form, it no more remains in the possession of an investor. It will be held by an intermediary in the market, okay, as an electronic record. So that intermediary which holds securities in the electronic form in the market is known as depository, right? Now you can see some of the names of multinational consulting firms that offer legal and auditing services to the companies, particularly during a public offer, right? Some of these consulting firms include Ernst & Young, PricewaterhouseCoopers, McKinsey and Company, and Deloitte. They are just the prominent ones in this field, right? Now let's see the role of these consulting firms as far as the capital market is concerned, or in more particular as far as the public offer is concerned, right? Now the companies that want to Now, the companies that want to go for public offer need to hire legal counsel and auditors for taking care of various legal matters on their behalf. For example, these intermediaries can help issuing companies in matters relating to conducting of due diligence, drafting of certain sections of the offer document, providing of legal opinion about the compliance matters, and also assisting their client companies in the closure of the issue. Okay. Now, what you may ask, what is due diligence? Okay. Due diligence is a thorough act of investigation, audit, or review performed by examining of financial records of the issuing company to confirm the facts before any transaction between issuing company and the investor could be made under the public offer. Okay, so this due diligence, exercise is always done by a independent third party intermediary in the market, and that independent third party intermediary in the market could be either a lead manager, or in most cases it is a legal counsel or an auditor, right? The issuing companies can, why this is needed, why a due diligence process has to be carried out for any public offer which is going to be made in the market, because there is always a possibility that the issuing companies can fudge or fabricate sensitive information that would be needed by the prospective investors to take a call about a certain offer made by them in the market. Okay, so that's what is due diligence and how important it may be, right? Moving on. Now we talk about the stock exchanges as a principal market intermediary, right? The exchange acts as the exchange acts like just like the exchange acts just like a heart in the market for the role that it plays there. Okay, on your screen you can easily spot two major stock exchanges that operate in India. These include National Stock Exchange, or in short as NSE, and the Bombay Stock Exchange, or BSE. BSE is one of the oldest stock exchanges of the world. However, NSE is of very recent origin, right? These two stock exchanges have helped a great deal to develop India's capital markets, including the retail debt market, which has in turn been very instrumental for India to grow its overall corporate sector. Right. Now let's understand what stock exchanges do in the market. What's their role? Okay. These two stock exchanges that we mentioned earlier provide an anonymous electronic platform that's useful to participants both in case of fresh offers as well as subsequent trading in the market, right? The main task of this electronic platform is order matching between buyers and sellers in the market. Besides this facility, these exchanges also offer other types of necessary services that include clearing, settlement, and risk management, right? These services are very important and integral to support trading and investment activities of the parties in the market, right? Stock exchanges also undertake a lot of activities for imparting financial education so as to increase financial literacy among the society as a whole. Okay, so that was about the role which is performed by stock exchange in the market. Now is the case of understanding the role of stockbrokers. Okay, again on your screen, you can find a few of such stockbroking firms that work in India. Okay, so who is a stockbroker and what does he do? In simple, stockbrokers are the members of a stock exchange that offer services to people in the market on behalf of the stock exchange, right? Hence, people that want to place orders of buying or selling securities in the market can do so by placing their orders with the brokers or sub-brokers. Now, who is a sub-broker? A sub-broker is a broker's agent and acts on his behalf, right? These brokers and sub-brokers facilitate the other stock exchange services as well to their clients, and these services would include clearing, settlement, and risk management, right? Finally, we have clearing houses, right? Now, who are they and what is their role in the market? Let's examine that. Okay, the clearing houses are basically subsidiaries of the stock exchanges. They are meant to help stock exchanges in clearing and settlement of trades that people make on the stock exchange, right? A trade is nothing but a matched order between two parties. Okay, at the end of every trade, these clearing houses receive information about various orders made on the exchange that require clearing and settlement. Following this information, clearing houses, with the help of other intermediaries that include banks, depositories, depository participants, and share transfer agents, ensure that settlement and clearing is finalized for all the matched trades for the parties that made them on the stock exchange, right? With this, we conclude today's discussion on different financial intermediaries and the role that each of these has in the capital market. Hopefully, this understanding will be very much useful for us in the coming days to learn the overall functioning of the capital market.